Hey guys, this is part 3 of our series on Spring Boot project. In this video, let us convert our Spring Boot application into a Spring REST API by adding REST endpoints. Let us jump into the application directly. This is the product controller. In the product controller, we have added all the methods that are available in iProduct service. Now we need to convert these methods into REST endpoints. And we need to call the methods of iProduct service. So let us auto-wire iProduct service. Private iProduct service, product service. Annotated with @auto-wire. In all these methods, we are having the return type as either void, list of product DTO or one single product DTO object. Now I want the return type to be as response entity object. So what is this response entity? This response entity is a class. When you talk about a request response model, a request has headers, status and body part. Similarly, when you talk about a response has headers, status and body part. The headers have the details about the response. It can be what type of data it can accept, what type of language it will accept, the content type. It can pass on the session ID or the cookie. In case of status denotes the status of the response. It can be 200 OK, 500 internal server error, 201 created and so on. And body represents the body part of the response. So when you are sending the response from the REST API, you need to send all these together to the client which is calling this REST API. The response entity has all these three details, that is the headers, status and body. If you want to add your own custom headers, that is also possible. Now let us add the return type of all the methods as response entity. Let me first start with the getter methods. So the return type of getAll is list of product DTO. I want to convert it into response entity of list of product DTO. And now let us call the method of product service. Product service dot getAll. The return type is a list of product DTO. First let me get it. Product DTOs equal to product service dot getAll. Now I need to return a response entity object. While returning a response entity object, I can also add custom headers. So let me create the custom headers. HTTP headers. When you are importing HTTP headers, you need to import it from org.springframework.http. Be very careful about this. Headers is equal to new HTTP headers. Now let us add our own custom headers. Headers.add. The first parameter is the header name. The second parameter is the value for the header. Getting all products. Now let us return a response entity object. When you want to return a response entity object, you can either call the static method of the response entity or you can create a response entity object. For this particular method, let us create a response entity object using the constructor. And for the rest of the other methods, let us use the static method. So in this case, let me create response entity of list of product DTO. Response entity equal to, let me use the constructor. Here you can see there are multiple constructors available. Let us use the constructor which is accepting body, status code and header value. Here you can see this constructor. It accepts the body. In our case, it is product DTOs. The second parameter is the headers. The third parameter is the HTTP status code. So we can pass on the status code. HTTP status code dot value of 200. If you notice, in the older versions of Spring Boot, the third parameter was simply HTTP status. So you can pass on the enum value as HTTP status dot OK. But in this case, from Spring Boot version 3.0, they have changed this to HTTP status code. So let me click on this. This is an interface, not an enum value. In the next line, let us return the response entity object. Now the first method is over. Of course, we need to add the mapping to make this as a REST endpoint. So let us add the mapping as @getMapping. And we need to pass the URL. Let me add the default URL above the class @requestMapping / product-API / version 1. Now here get mapping, let me add it as /products. Whenever you are giving a naming convention for your REST API URLs, always remember it should start with the plural of your domain model in lowercase. In our case, the domain model is product. So the plural of our domain model is products. This has to be given in lowercase. Let us move on to the next method, getById. In this case, the return type is product DTO. So let me change this to response entity of product DTO. And let me call the method of product service is product service.getById by passing the product ID. The return type is a product DTO object. Next, we need to wrap this product DTO object into a response entity and return the response entity object. This time, let us use the static method of response entity. So the method is return response entity dot OK. OK means it is status 200 dot OK by passing the product DTO object. If you want to add headers, we can do that also. So let me copy this HTTP headers object, and it is getting one product by ID plus product ID. So now I need to attach the headers also. So let me change the method response entity dot status by passing the status code 200 dot headers by passing the header object dot body by passing the product DTO object. So this is the second method. Let us add the mapping for this also. The annotation is @getMapping /products /product ID. Let us use it as a path variable. Within curly braces, you just give it as product ID. And add the path variable annotation as parameter. Within quotes, it is product ID. Let me move on to the next method. List of product DTO get by brand. So the return type is going to be response entity of list of product DTO. Let me copy paste this and I will modify it. The method is product service dot get by brand by passing the brand. Here also let us attach the HTTP headers get products by brand plus brand. Let us wrap the list of product DTO object into response entity and return the response entity object. Return response entity dot status. This time let me use the first method HTTP status code dot value of 200 dot headers pass the header object dot body pass the product DTO list. Let us add the mapping for this also. The annotation is @getMapping /products /brand. Add path variable annotation also within the parameter. Let us move on to the next method, get by category. The return type is a response entity of list of product DTO. Let me change the return type. Let me copy this line also. This time the method is get by category by passing category. Here category is an array. And this time I don't want to add any custom headers. Let me return the response entity object just with the status code and the body part. So the method is response entity dot OK by passing product DTOs. And here we have given the category as an array, so it should be string category. Let us add the mapping also for this. The URL is /product /category. Before running this application, let me also show you the complete URL that has to be called from the client side to test this REST API. Now let us move on to the next method, get by color. Let me add the get mapping part first. String color. So here it should be curly braces category. And here within curly braces color. And add at path variable annotation also. Let me call the method of product service get by color by passing color. Return the product DTOs wrapped by the response entity object. Response entity dot OK of body. That is product DTOs. Let us change the return type also. For the last method, let us add the get mapping slash product slash brand within curly braces brand, then slash price within curly braces price. Now let us call the method of product service get by brand and lesser price by passing brand comma price. No need of headers, so let me give return response entity of OK product DTOs. Okay, one more change. This time in case of get by color, let us not use path variable, let us use request param. So the annotation that we will use is request param. Within the parenthesis pass color. We have completed all the methods, that is returning a list of product DTOs and one product DTO object. What if the method is having the return type as void? In that scenario, how will you return the response entity object? Let us start with the first method, add product. So in this case, the return type should be response entity of void, V capital, means void is a class. And this add product method is not going to return any response in the body part. It has to return only the headers and status. So we need to return a response entity of void as the return type. Before that, let us call the method product service dot add product by passing product DTO. The conversion of product DTO to product is happening in the service layer. The next line, let us add the return statement. Here we are going to return a response entity of type void. Response entity dot. In this method, you are trying to create a resource in the backend using the data provided by the client. So, in the response, you need to provide the status as the resource is created. The status code is going to be 201. So, let us select that status code. Dot status, HTTP status code dot value of 201, and we don't have any body part. If you want to return a response entity object, either you need to call the method body or you need to call the method build. So in this case, let us use the method build. Let us add the mapping for this method also. In this case, we are creating a new resource. So the annotation is at post mapping within parenthesis slash products. And the data is coming in the body part of the request because we are using the HTTP method post. So to retrieve the data from the body part of the request, use request body. In case of path variable, the data will come in the URL. In case of post method, the data will come in the body part of the request. In case of a form which is using a get method, the data will come as a query string. In that case, we need to use request param. Let us move on to the next method, update product. In case of update product also, the return type is response entity of void. And let us call the method product service dot update product by passing the product DTO object. In this case also, we need to return a response entity without the body part. It is response entity dot. This time, let us have the status code as accepted. So the method is dot accepted dot build. You can do it in this manner, or you can write it as return response entity dot status by passing the status code as 202 dot build. You can either use this method or you can go in for the next way. Both are perfectly fine. In case of update product, we are trying to update the product that is coming from the client side. So we need to use the HTTP method put. So the appropriate annotation is at put mapping. In case of put mapping, the whole resource is getting updated. In case if you want to update only a part of your resource, that is if you want to update only few properties of your object, then you can go in for patch mapping. In case of put mapping also, the data comes in the body part of the request. So we need to use at request body. Then the next method is delete product. So the annotation is at delete mapping. And the URL is /products /product ID / within curly brace product ID. We will give the product ID as a path variable only. So let me copy the path variable and add it over here. And let us call the method from product service dot delete product by passing the product ID. And we need to return the response entity object. Let me change the return type also. It is response entity of void. We have completed adding the mapping for all the methods. All our REST endpoints are ready now. Let me show you how this will be getting called from the client side. So for the first method, the URL looks like http://localhost:8080. In case if you are going to run the application in port number 8080 /product-api /v1/products. In case of put mapping also, the URL will be the same. The only thing is the HTTP method is changed to put mapping. And in case of delete mapping, the URL looks like product API /v1/products. After that /product ID /product ID value A001. Next is get all method. In case of get all method also, the URL looks same. Only thing that changes here is the HTTP method is get. For get by ID, it is product /product ID / the ID value. If you notice, the URL for get by ID and delete product looks the same. The only thing that changes over here is the HTTP method. Here it is delete, and in case of get by ID, the HTTP method is get. Now let me add it for get by brand. API /product /brand / some brand. Similar to this, let us do it for get by category. In case of category, it is an array. So we need to provide the values as comma separated values. Sports, kids. The same example for ball that I have told earlier. The next method is for color. In this method, we use request param. So we need to pass color as a query string in the URL. And for the last method, this method is a bit tricky. So the URL looks like product /brand /Samsung. This is the value provided by the client /price. This is a part of the URL /1000.2. Okay. Now our product controller is ready with all the REST endpoints. So if you notice, we have completed 90% of our application. The only thing that has to be added to our application is the configuration details with regard to the database in application.yaml file and a class that will handle all the exceptions that occurs in all the controllers. The exception part we will do in the next video, but the configuration details that is needed for the database, let us finish it off now. So let me create the YAML file, select src main resources, right click new file. The file name is application.yaml. Application.properties file is already available. If you want, you can use that. Why people choose YAML file over properties is it is much more readable than the properties file. Let us add the data source specific properties. Just type MongoDB automatically you will get the configuration properties of MongoDB. So what I need now is the URI only. Now we need to provide the URI. When you are providing the URI, let us discuss about three different scenarios. The first scenario is application and MongoDB are running locally. In this case, the URI will look like MongoDB : / localhost : the port number for MongoDB is 27017 / the database name trainingDB. This is the first scenario. The second scenario is application is running externally in the local machine and MongoDB is running as a Docker container. In this case, the URL will look like MongoDB : / instead of localhost, you are trying to access the MongoDB which is running in the Docker container. So you need to give it as 0.0.0.0. So this is the second scenario. The third scenario is both the application and MongoDB are running as Docker containers. That is the scenario that we are going to work with, are running as Docker containers. So this is the one that we are going to deal with. So in this case, the URL will look something like MongoDB : / the container name, MongoDB container name, : 27017 / trainingDB. So in this case, let me just copy this. I'll change the container name over here. Let us assume that we will give the container name as MongoDB container or MongoDB con. Just to differentiate, if I simply give the container name as MongoDB, we will be getting confused. What is the purpose of this and what is the purpose of this? This is nothing but the name of the container. So to differentiate, let me give it as MongoDB con. So this is the only configuration detail that is needed for our application. In case, if you are going to work with MongoDB, which is having a proper username and password, you need to add those details also in the configuration details. In my case, I don't have any username and password, so I can directly go ahead with the URI alone. So our REST API is ready, the application setup is done. So in the next video, let us learn how to handle exception that occurs in a REST API. Till then, stay tuned. Thank you.